One no more saw it developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. One day, it is over his head. How is this to be avoided among ordinary men, even highly educated ordinary men? Frankly, I do not know. I do not see even now. Many, many times since it all happened, I have pondered that pair of great maxims, Principis obsta finem respice, resist the beginnings and consider the end. But one must foresee the end in order to resist or even see the beginnings. One must foresee the end clearly. And certainly, how is this to be done by ordinary men or even by extraordinary men? Things might have changed here before they went as far as they did. They didn't, but they might have. And everyone counts on that might. Continuing with, they thought they were free. Your little men, your Nazi friends, were not against National Socialism in principle. Men like me who were are the greater offenders, not because we knew better, that would be too much to say, but because we sensed better. Pastor Niemöller spoke for the thousands and thousands of men like me when he spoke, too modestly of himself, and said that when the Nazis attacked the communists, he was a little uneasy, but after all, he was not a communist, and so he did nothing. And then they attacked the socialists, and he was a little uneasier, but still he was not a socialist, and he did nothing. And then the schools, the press, the Jews, and so on, and he was always uneasier, but still he did nothing. And then they attacked the church, and he was a churchman, and he did something, but then it was too late, unquote. Yes, I said. You see, my colleague went on, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join with you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act or even talk alone. You don't want to, quote, go out of your way to make trouble, unquote. Why not? Well, you are not in the habit of doing it, and it is not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It is also genuine uncertainty. Uncertainty is a very important factor, and instead of decreasing as time goes on, it grows. Outside in the streets, in the general community, everyone, quote unquote, is happy. One hears no protest and certainly sees none. You know, in France or Italy, there would be slogans against the government painted on walls and fences. In Germany, outside the great cities, perhaps, there is not even this. In the university community, in your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom certainly feel as you do. But what do they say? They say, it's not so bad, or you're seeing things, or you're an alarmist, unquote. Or, as one hears in my field, you're paranoid, or you're a conspiracy theorist, quote unquote. Last couple of sentences again. In the university community, in your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom certainly feel as you do. But what do they say? They say, it's not so bad, or you're seeing things, or you're an alarmist. And you are an alarmist. You are saying that this must lead to this, and you can't prove it. These are the beginnings, yes, but how do you know for sure when you don't know the end? And how do you know or even surmise the end? Interrupting, we now have the lesson of history, and so as we hear these words describing the German experience of 1933 through 45, we are in a position now to know the end. We do not have the excuse that this professor had. Continuing, on the one hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, the party, intimidate you. On the other, your colleagues pooh-pooh you as pessimistic or even neurotic. Again, interrupting, you're paranoid, or you're a conspiracy theorist, or I don't believe in conspiracy theories. How do you know for sure when you don't know the end? Continuing. On the other, your colleagues poo-poo you as pessimistic or even neurotic. You are left with your close friends who are naturally people who have always thought as you have. But your friends are fewer now. Some have drifted off somewhere or submerged themselves in their work. You no longer see as many as you did at meetings or gatherings. Step B, why should you at step C? And so on to step D. Continuing. And one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy, and some minor incident, in my case, my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying, "Jew swine," collapses it all at once, and you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world you were born in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, all reassuring. The houses, the jobs, the shops, the meal times, the visits, the concerts, the cinema, the holidays. But the spirit, which you never noticed because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, is changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. Now you live in a system which rules without responsibility even to God. The system itself could not have intended this in the beginning, but in order to sustain itself, it was compelled to go all the way. You have gone almost all the way yourself. Life is a continuing process, a flow, not a succession of acts and events at all. It has flowed to a new level, carrying you with it without any effort on your part. On this new level you live. You have been living more comfortably every day with new morals, new principles. You have accepted things you would not have accepted 5 years ago, a year ago, things that your father, even in Germany, could not have imagined. Suddenly it all comes down all at once. You see what you are, what you have done, or, more accurately, what you haven't done. For that was all that was required of most of us, that we do nothing. Unquote. Well, that sense applies to every member of the listening audience. Are you going to do something, or are you not going to do something? To be or not to be, as Hamlet said in the play by the same name. I think a very important perspective can be gained both on the state of California and on the state of the United States by reading from a very, very important book, one that I'm going to extract for you right now. This book had several different editions, the most recent from which I will read in 1971, almost a quarter of a century ago. The book is entitled Anti-California, Report from Our First Parafascist State. It's authored by Kenneth Lamott, L-A-M-O-T-T, described on the overleaf as follows. Kenneth Lamott grew up in Japan, graduated from Yale University, and served in the Navy during World War II. His work has appeared in various publications, including The New Yorker, Harper's, Horizon, The Nation, and The New York Times Magazine. His previous works include The Stockade, The White Sand of Shirahama, and The Moneymakers. Mr. Lamott now lives in Tiburon, California, with his wife and 3 children, where he spends most of his time as a writer, a novelist, and an essayist. By the way, he is now deceased. He died in the late 1970s. Kenneth Lamott's Anti-California, Report from Our First Parafascist State, was published in hardcover by Whittle Brown and Company, and copyrighted. The first edition was in 1963, the most recent in 1971. Now, to make a long story short, the basic thesis of Anti-California by Kenneth Lamott is that as goes California, so goes America. He sees California as not only a political entity which will drastically influence America directly, but one which is sort of a harbinger of things to come for the nation as a whole. I guess California could be seen as a pioneer, and there's a pun there, for the rest of the country in a bad way. And bear in mind again that this is being written in 1971. 23 years ago, and I don't think it requires a great leap of faith to see this particular book as ominously prophetic. In the conclusion to Anti-California, Kenneth Lamott writes as follows. To recapitulate, then, what I have argued in this book is that the traditional forms of American life have been disintegrating faster in California than they have... Beginning again, to recapitulate, then, what I have argued in this book is that the traditional forms of American life have been disintegrating faster in California than they have been elsewhere, and that we are in the midst of a profound reorientation in a new direction.